Hey guys, Connor Richards of PokerNews here at the 2024 WSOP in Las Vegas, and this is Life Outside Poker. My guest for this episode is two-time PPC champion Dan Jungleman Cates, who won the event back-to-back in 2021 and 2022. He's also a legendary heads-up player and is widely regarded as one of the best high-stakes players in the world. All right, Jungle, thanks so much for coming in today. I'm really excited to get a chance to talk to you.
Well, thanks for having me.
And we're doing this here at the WSOP, but you actually came over from the Bellagio. Are you playing some cash over there?
Yeah, I'm playing the casual 3K, 6K game, the mixed game. There's 12 different games. A lot of the best in the world players there. And, it's quite heated, quite tough. Probably almost got thrown out once or twice.
Oh, wow.
But mostly behaving myself. 90% or so, 95%.
So does it get pretty rowdy there in Bobby's room?
Yeah, it's like super heated. Everyone's like, there's quite some big egos, and if there's some disagreements for money, they can get pretty heated. I mean, I had a very valid disagreement with somebody else. I'm convinced. I think a lot of people would say I'm in the right, really, but for now, I'm not going to say anything. Well, I guess that got me really riled up. Other than that, yeah, I mean, it's not so unusual that there's some heat there, especially with mixed games are very prone to big egos and some spicy conflicts of sorts.
Yeah, I'm sure. Got to be big egos in that game. And in a 3K6 game limit game, what are the swings like in that game?
It's pretty, right now, actually, or today, I'm losing like 100, maybe a little less, something like that. Just 20 bets is relatively normal. Like losing 200K is like not so crazy. And you can lose 600 too. It's like kind of tough, but it's not an unusual swing in the grand scheme of things, but it's rare to experience it within 24 hours. But online, it's much more likely to happen, for instance.
Yeah. And I think this is the same game that we see like Patrick Antonius posting about online. Who are some of the other big names in the big game over there?
Yeah, he likes to post about it. I'm trying to think of who I should talk about, because not everyone, some people want to be private. I'm thinking, Lyle Berman plays. I don't know if he cares. And David Oppenheim plays, I guess. Ray, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, plays. He might care, I'm not sure. I don't see why these guys are a little bit paranoid. I don't even know if they're all winning. Albert plays, King Yaya King. Gus is no longer playing lately. Philip Sternheimer plays. Who else plays that I can talk about? I don't know who else I can talk about. It's partly the thing, at least lately, that's played.
That's a good list of well-known players. And so during the summer, do you mainly focus on cash? We don't see you in a ton of tournaments, mainly just Players Championship and things like that.
I mainly prefer the cash, yeah. I mean, I'm starting to get a little curious with the tournaments. The thing about the cash is that it's pretty luxurious. It's like a little private room. Yeah. Like now they put it in the back room, but I mean, I personally don't care about that stuff. I don't care about luxury very much. And you can order order sushi and order like filet mignon or whatever it is. Whereas in the WSOP, you can't order sushi, filet mignon. And I recall before that, quite some trouble in ordering just like a grilled chicken, which I would have been happy with, actually. I would have been happy to just eat grilled chicken all day. Instead, it's like you got to go to the convenience store or do like a fucking protein bar or something or whatever. It's not really good. And so it's a big issue, and you don't really know when you're going to leave and stuff like that. So I definitely prefer the cash games, but I might play like a couple 10Ks or something, or maybe play a smaller one.
A smaller one, that'd be fun. Not? So during the summer, sounds like cash is definitely more your focus. What about year round? What are you doing outside of the summer poker wise?
It's still mostly cash. I've gone back into teaching lately. I've started a community. Trying to figure out how to grow it and make it flourish. I believe I have like the right reasons for making it. It's not about the money for me. Doing a lot of things to try to support the poker community, but I feel like we need a little bit more help in the directions of where exactly to move the needle, and a little bit more cooperation. I'll get to that in a second. I'm trying to think what else I do poker-wise. Yeah, I've been playing some tournaments. I went to Cambodia, I went to some Asia places, I went to Korea, played a cash game in Australia. That was cool. And what else? Went to Brazil. That was cool. I'd like to go to Brazil again. It's fun enough to go there. I might do that. And what else? So yeah, the community thing. I'm trying to incorporate to create some what do they call it? How do you say? I'm trying to create some like systems of sorts that can scale in ways that are beneficial in terms of impact for the poker world. One thing I want to do is, for example, create this, I hate this term, the blacklist, but something that just holds people accountable. The problem with the term blacklist is if you someone does something bad and you label them like a bad person, period. I don't really believe in that. If they want to redeem themselves, then they should be able to. But some people do have to be really be made aware of, and examples I think should be made if people do bad things. And I think that in the poker world, there's lots of people not paying and people being a pain in the ass when they owe money and all these kinds of things. And I think there needs to be more accountability. So this is one thing I'm starting to take track of people that do owe, and at least out a few names at least. But I'd like to get people more on the page of reporting these people, essentially having at least some open accountability. Another thing is I'm creating a map of the poker world, which I think will help balance the economies a bit, because there can be many games that are good that are hidden, and if you have a way to compare them all pretty easily, you can find which games are good and which ones aren't. And also this makes for sites that charge too much rake out of greed and not for the sake of what they need or what when they charge too much and it hurts too many players, it helps to balance that out. So that's another thing I'm working on. And I'm working on a jobs market. I want to create jobs for poker players that, because I think there's lots of roles where there's much more, where higher stakes players need something done, and once you get to a certain level, you have enough money to spend it on someone else, and this helps lower stakes players to have something going for them, especially if they're on a downswing or whatever, and gives them a lot more stability and gives people a bit more money, especially when there's a handful of people at the top that aren't mega rich, but they're rich enough that they can give people a pretty good salary, $100 an hour or whatever. And I feel like this solves a lot of problems. So I have been. Those are a few key features that I'm working on. There's a few more I want to have. I want to organize the content and allocate it properly, and the content that's good for certain useful things, that kind of thing. And the idea really is to help the poker economy. What I think I'd really like to figure out is to some kind of way, or to influence in some kind of way, to bring more recreationals to the game and have them stay in the game. Because if there's more recreationals, or if there's more money coming in from poker, there's a term for this actually, or there's two possibilities rather. But one is, if there's more recreationals coming into poker, this will help boost the poker's economy. It'll help more players to be able to succeed. And if the recreationals can actually get something out of it that they're happy with, the proper amount of entertainment, for example, is a pretty obvious thing, or a good experience, then they'll stay. It's usually how any economy works, right? And the other way is if poker somehow becomes a spectator sport, which there's a few people working on it. I understand ACR is working on this. Maybe Hustler's kind of working on this. It's kind of happening. Spectator mind sport or whatever, somehow really fun to watch or whatever. That way, that would support the economy at large, and now it becomes a much more viable end game plan to become like a poker pro and like battle against high stakes pros, and then no longer do you like need to, or many people need to win to sustain themselves. Exactly. And there's much more like glory in it. So yeah, working on a handful of those things on the side.
Yeah, that's a lot there. How far along are you on that project, and when is there going to be a release or anything like that?
I'm figuring out the right financial models for it, because like I'm just currently spending my models on these things. It's beginning stages, and it's also like, how the fuck do you make these things real? So I've been I've created a few different little smaller projects and put out like a few jobs and that sort of thing, but it's really just beginning stages. Any help would be appreciated. That's like not that obvious to make systems that scale, that are novel and that are, you know, making a positive difference. I have outed a couple people that in my eyes were, one, they owed money. That's by itself not a reason to get outed, and were like actively doing something bad and not communicating or doing anything. And one thing I can say is like immediately one person did come forward, or one of the people that I did out did come forward and like paid someone else like there was a big debt. They paid $40,000 within like days apparently, and they're now like trying to make amends, which is good. So it seems like there's really like quite some power in like just being just not letting people get away with bad behavior instead of doing nothing and that sort of thing. But looks like there's potential. Looks like there's a lot of people interested in this idea of a jobs market, and it's just never really been formalized. And I've heard of like various possibilities. I've heard of like internships of sorts for poker players. It seems like the thing that can be, what's the word, mass produced or like made. So that's really a thing.
Nice. Yeah, let's talk more about player accountability and some of the people that you've outed, as you've said. What are the keys to holding poker players accountable and maintaining high integrity? Is it to, you know, go public with these allegations, or to talk to them behind the scenes, or how do you make people accountable?
So I think that there should be, let's look at what used to happen in the past. It was like humans used to live in like small groups of 80 or whatever it was. And if someone did something bad, it would get around like all the groups, and now there'd be this social force against it, and you know they have some incentives to hide it or whatever, and like maybe they could get away with it, but it would get all around, and people had reputations that were very, very efficient. In poker and in the world today at large, the reputations are no longer nearly as efficient. There's still that force there. There's a lot of like equalization happening like naturally as it does, where someone does something scummy and someone says this and someone says that, and more or less the truth kind of comes out. These mechanisms are already like embedded in our DNA and our way of doing things, and I think if it was just organized and made more efficient and made fair, where you could have like a judge like who wants to do this come and like actually do it, for some cases as like a trial, like just essentially apply the part of the like an ad hoc court system to various situations, and then just have a verdict, and then there'd be like an official document that's shared between everyone or whatever about the result of it, and it could be put forth essentially. Like this is the kind of the idea of the blacklist, except the problem with the blacklist was there's no possibility of redemption, and even the court system in general, I think in many countries, is a bit damning and really fucks people over a bit too much. But I just think basically to make the knowledge public so that people can defend themselves against it, rather than, for example, having the situation where you have someone that like borrows money from somebody, doesn't pay it back, and then now wants to borrow from like someone else. Well, shouldn't this someone else like know the person's history to some extent, if like, or have some kind of knowledge of what the other person's been doing, especially if like there's something bad in there. And all I really want to do is just create it, and without the hate or without create this kind of record, at least as an experiment, particularly if people are offenders, and then just like within a limited space, and just to see how that works. I personally want to mass scale it, but I just want to do that a bit for offenders as like examples, because otherwise there's actually incentive for them to do fucked up things. And I think that people like are a little bit too apathetic in like not doing anything about it, because if you're too apathetic, then scummy people are gonna scum. That's really how it works. Like then the incentive structure breaks down, and then everyone, or a lot of people, as we see, just borrow money and like, oh, like what the fuck can you do? I guess it happened. Sorry, bro. Yeah, there just needs to be more visibility.
Redemption is interesting because, poker players make mistakes or do wrong things, but of course they should be able to redeem themselves and, for example, not have a lifetime ban on them. So what do you think should be required for someone to be redeemed? Do they need to acknowledge what they've done or pay off their debts, or how does someone get redeemed and welcome back into the poker world?
I think there's quite a bit of nuance into it. I don't think there should be layers to like outright, and it never really works this way, right? Where someone's like outright ostracized or whatever because they fucked up and like can't pay a debt or whatever. I don't think it should work like that. And even if like someone can't pay it, I don't think that by itself is that bad. What really, it particularly pisses me off is someone like isn't able to pay a debt and then they just kind of fuck off and run away. This is far worse than the person who can't pay a debt and is actively trying to pay it. This is like, they're trying to do the right thing, right? And this is like not nearly as bad of a situation. Yeah, so I think that there should be layers to it, but like obviously if someone owes a bunch of money, you shouldn't like, you should be aware of that before loaning the money. They should lose that privilege. Basically, instead of full ostracization, they just lose privileges based off of their behavior, right? I mean, that's kind of how it works. Like as a more extreme example, even if someone steals money, typically very few people will cross like the violence threshold, and so like you won't take the privilege of them being able to like be around other people from them, but you'll take away like the whole do business with them privilege, right? So you don't do business with thieves and people who are greedy as fuck, but you still trust to like go out with them or party a lot of the time or whatever it is. And I think a lot of those layers would have to apply. I mean, this is kind of how the court system works as well, where it does have all these layers. Like basically a lot of these systems, a lot of these problems have like been sorted somewhere else in one way or another. Like the poker is just a bit of a new scene, and where people are just, just too apathetic, man. They're just, it really pisses me off, because if there's like any kind of problem, it's just like, oh, we're going to do nothing. Sucks, bro. And then no one does shit, and they're like, I don't want to get involved. People will talk shit and about, there's a lot of people that just talk shit and then never act, and you can just kind of get away with being a dipshit in poker, and it's fucking annoying as hell. I don't like it.
And while we're on the subject of outstanding debts, one of the most infamous examples was Tom Dwan owing you money for a long time after the heads-up match between you never finished. What's the update on that? Is that all paid off?
Sure, it's not all paid off, but look, so Tom is one of those examples where like he's at least trying to do, I still think he isn't perfect by any means, but he's at least like putting effort in to try to make good on his debts, and like he's not 100% bad, because he is doing some things, and at some point, I definitely exacerbated things by being a bit too angry with him. I struggle still a little with when to express anger with people, but I think it is required at some point. With him, he still like made a lot of payments. Like it's harsh. It's a little bit too harsh to criticize him too much for a guy, whatever. If you owed the side bet of 1.5 million and a bet that he was getting screwed over and like lots of bad things were on, and that he basically hung himself, like he still paid like 1.2-ish. So it's not fair to say he's a piece of shit because he hasn't paid all of it, right? And slowly I came to that realization, and then eventually I realized I started feeling bad for him, because it looked like the same things that were like hurting me in the challenge seemed to be hurting him. We're hurting other people's dealings with him like quite a bit, and it seemed like actually I got off like easy in comparison. I felt like lucky relatively. From that perspective, I was lucky. And I was like, oh, well, shit. And then, and if you factor in his dealings into the equation, then perspective on the money changes a bit. And now, I mean, you want him to do well. This is one of these cases where, like, you want him to, like, win money or whatever. So, hopefully he wins more money, and he seems to have an optimistic situation in some ways. Like, plays really big games and whatever. And I think he's had a lot of terrible things happen to him. Made some mistakes, and hopefully it all works out. Don't we all want everyone to win? I think isn't that the plan?
That's the goal.
That's what I think the plan is.
But it sounds like you're really empathetic to, people who owe debts or have done things in poker. Do you think that that's something that we need, is more empathy and not just, I don't know, mobs and pitchforks type of mentality?
We definitely don't need more. We definitely don't need more mobs and pitchforks. The mobs and pitchforks are good when something's like wildly out of line and someone's like a really rampant offender. Then you need the mobs and pitchforks. Mobs and pitchforks for scumbags that are scumming and like rampant cheaters and like corrupt regimes and shit like that. When stuff like that. That's when we need the mobs and pitchforks, but not for like guys trying to actually fix their shit.
Yeah. And so speaking of the heads-up challenge with you and Dwan, you're widely recognized as one of, if not the best heads-up player in the world. At what point in your poker career did you realize that heads-up was your specialty, if you will?
Well, I don't think I'm the best in the world at Nolem Oldham anymore, for sure. No way. But maybe overall, it makes it might be the case. Or like if you factor everything in, but I realized there was something there when I switched from sit and goes to heads up, and I won $300, which was a lot of money to me back then, and I had like a $5,000 roll or something, or $7,000, I believe. Thought, okay, this seems like a lot of money. It was like at the time, and I just kept scaling from there, basically.
When was that? Were you still in high school at this point?
I was. It must have been my end of my first year of college.
Okay, and where were you at? Was it the University of Maryland?
University of Maryland. I must have been 18 years old. That's
pretty young. And how quickly were you able to move up stakes from, giving up to, I don't know, some nosebleed games?
I was able to move up in stakes to nosebleeds. I believe it must have taken me until I was 21, roughly. Yeah, right around then. So it must have been like a little over a year. That must have been how long it took. I hope that it's still possible for many players to do this. There's actually a hidden positive aspect of this. There's a hidden positive thing in poker, a few, which is one of the reasons why I built a community. I decided, okay, this seems like a good idea. One is that, in the world today, there's an increasing disparity between the poor and the rich, and this happens to be a very bad thing in terms of the collective pain of society. And actually, poker is a really good way for many people in like many different countries to go from poor to having quite some money. So it helps create a middle class. And actually, another thing is that an interesting thing about at least live poker games is this is a way for like the classes to mingle. Like the middling class, or even like the people that came from a lower class, to mingle with the higher classes, or the super rich people who want to have some entertainment or whatever, then for both of them to kind of see the perspectives of each other. And most people probably didn't guess that actually these are a couple very good things that are otherwise like kind of hard to make happen. It's like, how the fuck do you get the really rich people to hang out with like fucking kids from like the potentially like the like, I don't know if they could come from the slums, but at least like the lower middle class or whatever. But there's a few hidden benefits of poker that I ultimately realized, like, oh shit, there's actually something here in terms of positive impact. Who would have thought?
So sticking on your upbringing a little bit, you were a big video game player.
Yes.
I'm wondering how that helped you on your poker journey, or what sort of the parallels there are.
Well, matter of fact, this is an important point, and another thing that I've thought about lately is that the video games are they have a bit of a bad reputation, but I don't think that's the whole part of the story. So the video games helped train me for poker. The video games being a lot more fun and quite a bit easier. More fun in the short term, I guess you could say, and a certain kind of dynamic of payoff systems in comparison to a lot of real world things that are quite a bit tougher, such that they help to get you ready for things with longer payoff systems, such as poker, but also like there are deeper downsides, but also deeper upsides that would be hard for a child or a young person to get used to. But video games help bridge that gap and help train like the critical thinking skills and the mental stamina skills, or whatever, mental stamina period. And from there, you can say that poker is like I think that poker is anyway a good like training ground of sorts for life in many ways, because you get exposed at least a bit of risk to financial risk, and you have to critically think, or else you're going to lose. You have to be honest with yourself, and all these other important qualities to be independent and like sort your own shit. So I view video games as sort of like a pre-game for the poker game, basically, and I view poker as like a pre-game potentially for other sorts of games, you can say, that exist in the real world.
And are you still a big video game player?
I don't play that much, but I play sometimes. I don't have time to invest loads of energy. I'd prefer to invest it into other sorts of things.
Okay. What's your favorite game right now?
And I thought the Fire Emblems game was cute. I played that a little bit just for fun. Otherwise, I'm not really playing that much. There's like a Fire Emblems game, and you like run through the stories, and they actually have pretty good stories and cute little twists to their stories.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, so we're shooting this here at the World Series of Poker, and one of the historic moments of the WSOP was you winning the Poker Players Championship, a $50,000 event, the most prestigious event of the year. You won it back-to-back in 2021 and 2022, something that'll probably never happen again. Let's start in 2021. What was that victory like for you?
That victory was something out of the Twilight Zone. I definitely did not think I was going to win when I said that. It was just some bizarre twist of fate. I said it was my destiny to win. And when I got to the final table, I thought, oh shit, maybe I'm going to win. Like, I got to go all out, go for it. Dye my hair blue and make some magic happen. So I put on like the magic hair, and then somehow I got a guy to fold fucking top air for less than a big flat more to knock me out. Some fucking voodoo magic shit, like some energy blast. There's some spirit energy in it, and what was I gonna say? It lost. I monkey moded it up and used the power of blue air and the Dragon Ball Z and won it. And it's fucking destiny that, I guess, this is basically what happened.
I did want to ask you about that hand specifically.
Oh, wait, I forgot to mention, I did get the sensu beans, so it's not really fair. I got the sensu beans, candy that heals you when you get fucked up in the cartoon. So that's not fair. And I did have an energy boost, which I tactically hid the entire time for like the right moment when I was a little fucked up.
Yeah, sounds like you were winning that for sure. But yeah, that hand it was against Ryan Lang. It was during three-handed play, and I believe if he called you right there, you would have been out in third, and you ended up going on to win it. So
yeah, but he didn't know I had a power boost.
Well, he got a lot of criticism for that fold. People were calling it, worst fold ever. But I think you actually kind of defended it and thought that it wasn't as bad of a fold as people were making it out to be.
I defended Ryan, but I didn't defend the fold. The fold is, but when you're up against someone who has mystic powers, then I guess, like, you're out of luck then. I mean, that's my defense, is that mystic forces were afoot, and it was just it was inevitable, I guess. he was going to make this stupid fold at some point. That was the time.
And to his credit, I think that you said you weren't really bluffing in that hand, right? You raised on the river with, I think it was second pair.
I bluffed the second pair for 1/10 the pot to get him to fold top pair. He checks the flop. Yeah, it was a bluff.
It was a bluff?
I knew it. No, it wasn't a bluff. It wasn't a bluff. It was fate. That was what it was.
Definitely a memorable one. That was actually my first WSOP with PokerNews, so I'll probably always remember that. But then, yeah, the next year you come in again and you go on to win it. How did that feel to kind of make WSOP history there?
Well, I again incurred mystic poker forces, and I did declare that I was going to defend my title as the reigning champion, Macho Man Dan. It had more spice and more swag than the entire fucking poker room combined. So obviously I was going to win, and I was serious when I said no one stood a chance.
Yeah, so every PPC you come in with a theme. It was Dragon Ball Z in 2021, then Macho Man Dan. Last year you were the Terminator. I remember that because I was covering that event. Yeah, what inspires you to do these big themed entrances?
Well, someone's got to spice things up, and I guess I just keep my alter egos want to come out, and they just keep coming, and someone's got to. The poker tournaments are a little bit too boring sometimes, and everyone's just kind of grumpy, and along comes Macho Man Dan, and things change a little bit. I just think the situations are much more fun when they're a little bit more absurd. And poker tournaments tend to be a little bit too monotonous for me. I do something crazy once in a while.
Well, your outfits definitely spice them up. And another good one you had last year was when you came in with Phil Hellmuth for the main event, the Greatest Showman theme, and he was rolling you around in a cage. Is that right? Whose idea was that?
I think that might have been my idea.
Really?
Yeah.
That was fun.
Well, he was my Pokemon before, right? He was like Charizard or something, and I was Ash Ketchum. I figured I'd return the favor, and I'd let him roll me around in a cage. And yeah, why not? I wanted to be a tiger a little bit and demonstrate my fierce side. And why not, I guess.
I don't know how much you want to give away, but what sort of theme are you going for this year?
This time I'm going, I do have a very clear theme. It's going to be more on the subtle side, or at least a little bit more symbolic, I guess you can say, and we'll have to wait for how the cards fall. I have a plan with it that's all taken all the way to the final table. Plan is to win, of course.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I know we're all excited to see you there and hopefully winning a third title. So something else you were involved with that a lot of poker players will be familiar with was Game of Gold. It was a huge success, biggest show of poker last year. A lot of the lesser known people on that are now instant celebrities. You were one of the more well-known players going in, but what was your whole experience like on Game of Gold?
Game of Gold was actually a pretty good attempt by GG Poker to broaden the audience of poker to a more recreational, more fun-oriented group. I think it was a great experiment. I'm certainly proud to be a part of it, and I think that their idea really was collectively beneficial for everyone. Fortunately for them too. You've got to give them kudos for that. This is they did a really good job of making something that goes beyond just watching some cards and knowing some nerdy details about the game to something that can have emotions behind it and now is a lot more palatable for a lot more people. The experience was very unique. I fortunately just did my own thing and happened to be entertaining for most of the people there. I wasn't really trying to be entertaining most of the time until towards the end, and then my inner leprechaun apparently came out. So that was nice too, I guess.
It did look like you fell asleep there in the back room with Kind of England. Do you remember that clip?
I did, yes. I didn't think I was being really a dick to her. At some point, I tried to help her more. And I guess I was still a little more jet-lagged than I expected. I was trying to meditate, actually. I just fall asleep. But you have to make sure that your back isn't too comfy if you meditate, or else you fall asleep.
What is it about that show that do you think was so successful and kind of brought in poker to a mainstream audience? What do you think that show did right?
Well, there's more narrative around the emotions that I think a lot of people can relate to. I think that's the main theme, whereas a lot of the time poker lacks that completely, even though it has the potential for that in certain kinds of ways. It has the potential to have something thematic be part of it, because really the elements of improv are just how you interpret a sequence of random events. So the elements of theater are, I mean, there's a parallel to how the real world works, but the elements of theater are sort of how you interpret a bunch of sequences to random events, or random, or whatever. Yeah, that's what that's what a lot of people can attach to. That's how there's something gained from anything, actually, is you gain something from the sequence of events, not from the events themselves. And really, that, in many ways, is actually where the true source of where ultimately one's ideal experience can be defined, if that makes sense. Because only by changes in state can someone feel something and get something out of otherwise meaningless existence.
How comfortable are you playing in an environment like that where you're on a reality TV show, there's cameras rolling, things like that? Do you think you're able to play your A game?
Yep, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, not at all?
Yeah. Who cares? Cameras. Yeah,
there's one there now.
Oh, who would have thought?
Is that something that you had to learn over the years to grow comfortable with, or just right away playing on TV tables were you okay with it?
I think I definitely had a natural disposition towards playing on cameras. I never really cared that much. I mean, of course, there's a learning curve to it. I would say it's more difficult to find the learning to tackle the learning curve of being more interesting on camera, though.
Yeah.
Being more positive in some direction.
Nice. Well, you mentioned many interesting things that you're working on, but another thing that you have going right now is you have your own podcast, the Winning the Game of Life.
Yes.
That launched how long ago? A year ago?
Yeah. With that, I've figured out a direction of sorts, a direction within directions, because, the ultimate goal was to try to effectively win the game of life. How the fuck do you get everyone to win? And so what happened was I kind of narrowed it down a bit. I have this idea that could go on to multiple different ideas. That being, okay, I'm a fucking poker player and my audience doesn't give a shit about my thoughts. Well, excuse me. That's not what I meant to say. Most of my audience does not give a shit about my thoughts about fucking politics or whatever. And generally spirituality. They care about me in poker. So what the fuck can I do within poker that's related to this? Well, my idea is to help the struggling classes and to provide them with the resources that they need in a way that hopefully benefits me too. I mean, I need to make some money at some point. Right now, I'm not making a fucking dime from my podcast. And the idea is just to provide the right resources and the right information, largely speaking, to the up-and-coming poker players and try to help them find different things to try to improve. That's the sub-theme of what I'm doing with it. Hypothetically, what could happen is to go from there and then to go to crypto or whatever. Crypto is a little bit related to poker because it has to do with investments or whatever. And there's also poker players that do crypto. And then maybe also go from there and do something else, such as something else that's liberating, such as what's the Dropbox or whatever? What is it called? Commercial sales, something like that. Sales through eBay. What is it? This is another thing. Drop shipping. Like potentially to investigate the idea being to investigate other avenues that lead towards financial freedom and possibly also spiritual freedom, which is a far harder thing to achieve. But that would actually be on theme with this idea of winning the game of life, because through poker you can effectively liberate yourself. It's one way of doing that, and that was originally why I got into poker, in fact.
And this podcast is obviously a great resource for people in the poker community, but do you find that it helps you out as well, either, on communication skills or just getting to pick the brains of up-and-coming poker players or successful people?
Yes, it actually has had many hidden benefits. I don't know whether it has financially benefited me, but one thing that I really want a lot of the poker players to get through their brains is that there's a lot of different ways to, and this is true for everyone really, a lot of people look at value from people as something, even I make this mistake plenty, as something that's, it's hard not to, is something that's like linear or like confined to a box or something like that. And to look at it as a lot of different things. In this case, with the podcast, it's helped me a lot with like finding out a lot of resources and getting into the brains of many different top pros. And actually, I've learned quite a bit from interviewing these guys. I learned about many different resources I didn't know were out there, including from like doing a bit of market research myself on really where the state of poker is. And it's actually had a lot of hidden benefits. I don't know if it's exactly worth the cost currently, but it also was an exercise for me to become more professional and to do something different, and to, as you said, work on my communication skills, and to be more ask good questions in conversation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like a small business in many ways, and it in a way was an anchor to actually starting a business, which is quite a bit harder in my opinion than poker.
And you've had a lot of interesting poker players on. Some recent guests have been Justin Saliba, Chance Kornuth, Dylan Wiseman, Igor Kurganov. Do you have a favorite episode that you've done so far?
Favorite episode? Might be... I like the episode with Nate Silver. I thought that was really interesting. For me personally, just because Nate Silver goes into a lot of interesting subjects, and we got to talk about lots of different things, and I got lots of his thoughts on a wide array of things that most poker players won't resonate with. Other than that, maybe with True Teller or with Stephen Chidwick are a couple of the favorites.
Nice. I also had a chance to talk to Nate Silver this summer. That'll be a previous episode or a future episode of this podcast. What was your favorite thing talking to him about?
Let's see. One thing that stands out was the possibility of nuclear war and all these crazy end of the world sorts of situations. I think that there's also possibility of, while there's possibilities of end world sorts of situations, I think actually, even though there's it actually looks to me as there's inevitability of very what you might call huge downswings for humanity. There's also the potentiality with those for huge upswings. And this is the nature of duality. And I think that personally that there is a possibility, it looks inevitable of sorts, that the world will lead to a higher state of social behavior. That's my personal opinion. And it looks like that has collectively happened over time. If you look at this book called Non-Zero, if you read this book called Non-Zero, it does talk about this, how, and you can see it through the course of evolution, but basically how things become better and better in terms of getting closer and closer to total harmony. We evolved a lot since the chieftains with the groups of 80, and the chieftains having roughly 80% of the total power. Things are a lot better since then.
Right on. All right, let's talk a little bit about other life things, because you have so many interesting things going on. You climbed Mount Kilimanjaro last year. Did that happen?
I did. I did something like that recently, actually. I climbed to almost the top, and then I had a headache, and they didn't allow me to go any higher.
Oh no!
But actually, a bit of a crazy thing happened recently. I went on a trip with some friends of mine mostly from Eastern Europe. Eugene Kachala was there as well. He talks lots about deep subjects and is interested in spirituality also. And then we went to Tibet, which we're interested in for spiritual reasons. And we were going to do this thing called the Kora, which is this 32-mile walk around the most sacred mountain in the world, called Mount Kailash. And that sounded easy. So what I didn't even realize we were going to do a 32-mile walk. But what they didn't tell me is that the elevation for most of this walk is over 4,000 meters. And in fact, the whole country of Tibet is over 4,000 kilometers. 4,000 meters, like above sea level. So it's all like fucking on a mountain effectively. Which, first of all, is crazy as fuck because, like, I don't even know what the sea level for this is, like 1,000 meters or something. But once you get to, like, 4,000 meters, almost every single person has altitude sickness. We all basically had it, which means we had a splitting headache. I had a splitting headache for 3 fucking days straight. I could not sleep for 3 days straight. I basically could not eat. I brought protein powder with me. I was forcing myself to eat it so I wouldn't lose my muscle mass. And it tasted like fucking medicine. And I'm just like trying to go to sleep the whole night because I'm freaking out. Like, fuck, I'm not going to sleep. Like, maybe I'm going to get brain damage. I don't know what the fuck's going to happen. I'm like trying to force myself to eat eggs, and it tastes terrible. And so we got there, and apparently this was like way harder than people had mentioned. I didn't even know about it. And then I decided, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. And I in the middle of day 2, I'm like feeling terrible. We're at 4,000 meters and we're at this like place. I mentioned, I can't sleep. And all of a sudden I remember the song. Oh wait, that song Altitudes, man, by Jason Becker. Do you know about that song? And it's about this, it's a really inspiring song. And this dude, Jason Becker, wrote it, who was about to become, he was like a guitar virtuoso, and he's about to become like most famous guitar guy like in the world. But what happened was he got Lou Gehrig's disease. He became paralyzed, and he couldn't move at all, basically like anything. He was like completely fucking paralyzed, so he couldn't like pursue that. But what he did was he kept writing music through like fucking a system where he like could move his eyes left and right.
Wow.
And with the help of his dad, like kept writing music for decades later, in spite of the fact that you're supposed to die within like a few years or something. And one of the songs he wrote, I don't know if he wrote it while paralyzed or not, but he wrote the song Altitudes, and it was like one of my favorite songs. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna listen to Altitudes. I'm gonna fucking do this. And so sleepless, I walked 32 fucking miles in 2 days and up to 5,900 meters. And I did it. Me and one other guy did it, and everyone else like kind of they backed out. They're like, no, fuck this shit. We're just taking a taxi. So that's my story. I did the Kora and walked around to Mount Kailash.
And what's the next big outdoor adventure that you have planned?
That's a good question. I have a crazy idea of sorts that is fucking insane. I want to test it a little bit more and test the reception from the public. But it'll be a lot harder than the Kora, but it'll require maybe that kind of level of inspiration. I think I'm going to train in Mallorca a little bit with some of the athletes that I was invited to with a trainer of mine and we'll see, we'll test some things, and I think I'm going to pursue other things of fitness. I had this crazy idea to go to a Shaolin camp and learn some Kung Fu properly, and like really take martial arts a bit more seriously.
Yeah.
I might do that or learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or something like that.
Yeah, you seem to be very focused on both mindfulness and then physical health. How important is that for poker players?
In this case, it's very important for, at least mindfulness is very important. I don't know if physical health really was for me. I go to the gym a lot anyway, but it's not exactly for poker. I like this idea. Well, I had innately this idea of applying this idea of an optimal reality towards things beyond poker and just applying it towards living one's life. And if you have this idea of achieving more, then which can be one's path, it would mean you would want to master your physical discipline, and you'd want to master your mental discipline, be able to control your mind. So that's what's led me partly a bit to martial arts, and it's also I like the artistic side of things, and this led me towards like a few spiritual retreats and things like that too. So, but definitely mental. To answer your question, mental. What is it? Mindfulness. Mindfulness is super important for poker because the more zen you are, the better you are, basically.
Yeah.
But it's true for anything too. Like ideally, you would have perfect mindfulness, but it's extremely difficult.
All right. Well, just a couple more general questions as we wrap up here. We were just talking about, nuclear war and the extinction of humanity, but on the other side of that, what's something in the world that makes you hopeful?
I did answer that, is that with the possibility of, I don't think nuclear war is going to happen actually, but there's an extremely likely possibility that there will be huge downswings in humanity. I think people have not really looked into history to see that in fact it's very much the norm for society to go on massive downswings, and there's a lot of factors that are leading in that direction. It's like every single era thought it just wasn't going to happen, and then it did happen. However, with like the breaking down of various old systems, it's a bit inevitable, in fact, to do that for the sake of building better systems. And I do think that we're getting kind of to the point where we're combining technology, logic, and this idea, or at least we're going to have to. It's being like kind of pushed, nudged, or in this direction. We're going to have to, in order to survive, to reach a greater world harmony situation, which has been the course of evolution for all of evolution. Actually, that is literally the way that evolution has gone over time, over like a super long run period of time. So I'm hopeful for that. There's lots of evidence of that, and it's hard to prove, but I guess we'll hope that happens, because I will say, I don't know how the fuck it would happen, but usually these problems do have solutions eventually.
Yeah, definitely. And what is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
What would it be? To trust people less, to value safety of financial assets more, to what else? Other than that, I don't know. Yeah, other than that, I don't know. There's not so many things that I think would be very efficient. Let's say maybe hit the gym more, something like that. But I just don't see why I would have listened. Let's put it that way.
All right, last question. We talked about the similarities between poker and video games, but poker has parallels between lots of different things in life. What's your favorite life lesson that can be drawn from poker?
Really good one is equanimity. It seems that if you can, the ideal two actually. So one is like the ideal optimal play would be you hold the emotion that you experience just as you do in poker, and then you don't let it control the decisions that you make, that rather you have total control over them. If you could do that, you would be on the level of fucking Christ or Buddha or something. It's extremely hard to do, but it's maybe theoretically possible. I don't know. No one in poker even can do it in poker, so there's that. People get kind of close in poker, but not really. And the other one would be, I personally think that it's actually related, is that the GTO play in life would be to do that essentially. That would be like always the GTO decision, if you could like somehow have this perfect equanimity.
That's great. Well, Jungle, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. We'll let you get back to Bellagio, and hopefully you can get that 100K back and more.
Sure. Well, we'll see about that. All right. you.